Year 2130X. The virus is out of control. All civilizations have collapsed. Those who could afford to leave Earth did so, while the rest of us stayed here to rot and die. Only a few of us have survived for this long, but I fear what we call home will not remain for much longer. Only time will tell the fate of humanity.
Back in March this year, I made a small prototype of this game for Ludum Dare, which I showcased to Twitter twice before deciding to abandon the project to continue working on Roseblight. One of my buds, Devlog, contacted me about wanting to make a bundle filled with games from other developers, and I decided to work on the game in order to include it with the bundle. My initial plan was to work on this and Roseblight simultaneously, and then release this game shortly after to sort of cross-promote Roseblight and the bundle. Eventually the bundle idea sort of fizzled out, so I put this project on the back burner to focus on Roseblight. And now that Roseblight's out and I don't have anything big to work on at the moment, I'm going to start working on this now, and will hopefully turn it into a full game in the future. Project Malice is an isometric roguelike third-person shooter that takes place in an apocalyptic wasteland, previously known as Earth. The title Project Malice is a placeholder, much like how Project Trowel was a placeholder for Roseblight. I know that there's already like a Doom mod with the same name, so it's not going to be final. The game features procedurally generated levels, a wide variety of enemies, each with their own unique perks and traits, along with an arsenal of artifacts that can aid you in the wasteland. At the moment, there are only 3 areas: the sewers, the gardens, and the apartments. This is subject P01, Tony. He's the first playable character in the game, and is the quote-unquote main character of the game. I don't want to go too much into his backstory yet, but let's just say he's been under a rock for the past few years and has little idea of what's going on around him. His 3 weapons are a shotgun, a pistol, and a rapier. One of his special traits is he can reflect projectiles while he's dodging. Overall, he's a simple and well-rounded character. The general gameplay is pretty straightforward. You walk around and shoot anything that tries to kill you. One of the things that you'll notice about this game is the third-person view, which you have full control over the camera angle and its orientation. The 3D camera was inspired by a game called Leanthus. I'm entirely sure how it's pronounced. It was released by Devlog a little over a year ago. After playing that game, I was like, "Whoa, this is fantastic!" I knew at some point that I wanted to make something similar. This game was made in GameMaker, like most of my other games, and uses a 3D projection asset that was created by Devlog called Stack3D. Technically, this is a 2D game, but it's using 3D projections to sort of make it look like it's 3D. This makes it much lighter for running in comparison to like an actual 3D game. When you look at the walls of the corridors that you explore, they're actually like a cube, and you're looking at the inside out of it. This effect is done through face culling. One of the things I've noticed myself enjoying the most while making games is creating a wide variety of enemies with different abilities and behaviors. Roseblight and Buckler 2 both have a large amount of unique enemies, but both lack something that makes fighting them fun. For Project Malice, I want to make sure that the enemies are not only fun to fight against, but you have plenty of opportunities to fight against them in different ways. Of course, there are other things that I would like to focus on, but the key to making something good is to know what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. I've been showcasing some of the enemies that I've added to the game on Twitter, and I'd like to go through them just to go into a little more detail about them.
E01, the Shambler. This is the basic enemy that most of the other ones are based off of. All it does is walk up to you and attack you. It's pretty simple, but I wouldn't underestimate it. E02, the Chaser. Very similar to the Shambler, except it's faster and has less health. They can pop up around corners and surprise you if you're not careful. E03, the Sneezer, an enemy with a shotgun nozzle in its face. They are a long-range unit that will stand back and attack you with the spray of bullets. If you notice towards the ground at the enemy's feet, you'll see an arrow pointing in the direction that the enemy is facing and will be attacking. It's important that you pay attention to this so you know where to stand when they attack. Enemies with a longer range generally will take longer to attack in order to give you ample time to dodge if needed. E04, the Rough Saw, a slow yet durable enemy that wields a chainsaw. If you get close to them, it's almost guaranteed that you'll be ripped to shreds. It's best if you use ranged weapons to keep them away from you. Because they have a lot of health, I would personally suggest not wasting your ammo trying to kill them. E05, the Self-Loather. If you've played the game Self by Devdwarf, Connor Grail, and Matt Ugg, then you'll probably recognize this guy and understand how it works. When the Self-Loather attacks, it sends out a tongue-like projectile towards you, and then will pull itself along a path that the tongue has created, and then will attack you once it is finished. Because the path they make moves towards your current location, dodging backwards or side to side isn't going to be effective, so I would suggest moving towards where they started.
This is the first quote-unquote cameo enemy that I added to the game. Back when the game was going to be part of a bundle, I asked some of the folks who were working on it if they wanted some enemies based on games that they've made in the past. And a few of them said yes. So one of the concepts that I want to focus on for this game is taking mechanics from other video games and essentially turning them against the player. I'd like to add as many cameo enemies as I can so that I can sort of promote other games, and also so I can create like a lot of unique, interesting enemies in the process.
E06, the Quick Sprout. This enemy is based off of Sprout by Zed Squadron. This enemy is currently the fastest enemy in the game. It will literally pop out of nowhere and will outrun you, so try to kill it as quickly as possible. E07, the Blabber. This is based off of Gun Rounds by Blabberf, and sort of off of Blabberf himself. This enemy is actually pretty interesting. Normally, this enemy will walk up to you and shoot you at long range, but when you attack it, it will activate a shield for a few seconds. Any consecutive attacks while the shield is up will give this enemy extra ammo, and when it attacks again, it will fire the bullets back at you rapidly. This is sort of based off of the shield mechanic from Gun Rounds. The best way to kill it is by using a high damage single projectile weapon like the rapier, and to avoid using things like the shotgun. E08, the Flesh Cube, a floating mound of flesh. When you get close, it will start to shake and then slam down onto the ground, damaging you if you are within the attack radius. The amount of damage dealt is relative to how far away you are. E09, the Scope Creep, a very long-range enemy. Nice pun, huh? When you're within the Scope Creep's line of sight, it will prepare to attack you over a few seconds and will fire a single high damage shot. If you get close enough, it will back away from you. One thing I would like to mention is that since Tony can reflect bullets, it's possible for you to kill this enemy with your own bullet if you time it correctly. E10, the Spore Spreader. This enemy is similar to the Shambler, except when you're within their attack range, they will decrease your defense. You'll probably recognize the status effect icon from Roseblight. Offense and defense don't work like it does in Roseblight, so instead of there being weird mumbo jumbo, it just means that you take more damage. By itself, this enemy is not very threatening, but in a large group, it can mean a quick death. E11, the Rusted. This enemy is based off Haiku the Robot by Mr. Morris Games. Aside from being semi-tanky and dealing a lot of damage, they will also try to heal themselves after taking damage. This is based off of the healing mechanic from Haiku the Robot. The best way to take them out would be to kill them while they're not healing and kill them quickly. E12, the Skull Snatcher. This is based off of Zappling Bygone by Nine Finger Games. This enemy will jump at you while attacking, and they'll most likely end up behind you after doing so. They're actually pretty similar to the head crabs from Half-Life. It's probably easiest to take them out while they're jumping at you. E13, the Ruin Fencer. This enemy is based off of Ruin Fencer Ilia. They currently have 3 attacks: the standard attack with the rapier, a fireball, which will catch you on fire, and an ice attack, which will apply the frost effect if you're within range, slowing your movements briefly. It's probably best to take them out from a long range.
Each of these enemies varies in rarity and difficulty, so you will most likely see some more than others. One of the things I've noticed is that certain enemies, they have like a higher kill priority than others. And the key to effectively killing them is figuring out which ones to kill first. For example, the Sneezer has a higher kill priority than the Shambler because of the long range. And some enemies like the Spore Spreader have a higher priority because of the defense debuff. The Blabber has a low priority because they're not really threatening when they're in groups, and is only really a major threat in like one-on-one battles. Along with these enemies, there are also a small group of mythical enemies that are unkillable and will primarily serve as a way to spice up the battlefield if you encounter them.
The first one is K077, the Man Tree. If you played something, you'll recognize this guy. Man Tree only attacks you if you aren't looking at it, so if it's by itself, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you're busy attacking another enemy while it's present, it will most likely kill you in 1 or 2 hits. Fun fact, Mantry is technically the only zombie enemy in the game. The second one is an old friend, and my personal favorite enemy in the game so far, K150, the Cactus Farmer. Also known as Pablo, he is the protagonist of Cactus Farmer and Cactorio, and makes an appearance in some of my other games. When in range, Pablo will either attack you with his trusty revolver, or will summon a few cacti nearby to attack you or defend him. Pablo himself is not much of a threat, but his cacti will not only soak up a lot of your attacks, but will also prick you to death if you get too close.
That's all I would like to show off for now. At the moment, the game doesn't really have a whole lot of structure to it. I'm planning on adding things like boss battles and NPCs in the future, but for now, I've just been experimenting with a lot of different stuff. I'm not sure how big I want this game to be, but it will probably not be super big. I had a chat with a dev friend recently about mobile game design, and I think it would be possible to make a mobile version of the game along with a PC version. I've never really made a mobile game before, so I'm curious to see how that would turn out if I go down that route. It feels nice to work on something again. You know, after I released Rosebud, I was just like, you know, when you work on something for a long time and then all of a sudden you're not working on it, it's like, now what? You know? I think it's important that you always have some kind of goal that you're working towards, regardless of, you know, who you are or what you do. It feels nice to just have something to work on. I know that I definitely want to start this project off on the right foot, because although I was passionate about Roseblight and Buckwood 2 and a lot of my other games, a lot of them don't really have a proper foundation, and they eventually just become hard to work on as time goes on. I also hope that in the future I won't have as many incidents as I've had in the past. What's funny is that in August, September, and October there was just a lot of and then November is just like this is nothing. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but the weight that's been on my chest has finally lifted, so I'll take it as a silver lining. God, I've pissed off so many people and burnt so many bridges just so I can have a peaceful state of mind. But I feel like whatever I've done was what needed to be done. I've been sort of binge listening to the Chris Chan Comprehensive History series by Geno Samuel recently, and listening to that, I know that although things could have been better, things could have also been much, much worse. I really like this project. You know, roguelikes are something that are a little more up my alley, so I hope this game will turn into something I enjoy and hopefully other people will enjoy in the future. If you're interested in this project, make sure to follow me on Twitter where I've been posting updates about it. yep, that's pretty much it. As always, make sure to like and subscribe for future content, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.